Fantastic. That was my former role with the company, and I realized that I was not good at Python. So once we started writing different code than SQL, I was out. Said I'm gonna come be a trainer for a little while. All right, guys, welcome everybody. It is a little bit after 12 o'clock Mountain. We did want to give a little bit of time for people to get logged on. We know that you probably had a lot going on this morning. We got some housekeeping instructions up on screen. Just make sure that your audio is set up properly. We will not be enabling microphones today, so don't worry about a microphone setup. We're going to be utilizing the chat box a lot, so we got a good conversation going on. Maybe introduce yourself, let us know where you're calling from, let us know what department you're working in, and we'll get started here in the next probably 45 seconds or so. We want to be respectful of everybody's time today.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Hello, Taylor, CXO Training Communications. Sarah, welcome from Procurement.
Procurement.
Sarah, Procurement. Troy Montez. I wonder if you know him. Oh,
Hi,
and
Miss
Miss
Tammy.
Tammy. Welcome. Oh, you know Troy? Oh, that's great. Todd, welcome. Local retailer,
Mr.
Marketing and
Jacobs, nice to see
Meridian.
you again. Awesome, guys. Well, it looks like we're getting a bunch of people included here on the meeting. I want to be respectful of everybody's time, though, so I think we're going to go ahead and get things kicked off here. Um, Really, we want to start off and thank the Dish Women's Network for hosting their first Adobe Connect session. Both James and I, we are both allies of the group, and just recently, we are now members of the Dish Women's Network, so we're really excited to be here today. If you are not a part of the Dish Women's Network, we really encourage you to join the group. It's a really awesome collective, it's a great resource, and it's simple to sign up. A lot of good email communications come out from the group and a lot of cool opportunities like this training session. So if you want to go to dishwomensnetwork.com, that's how you can sign up to become a part of the group. Otherwise, welcome to our class here, guys. It's a pleasure to be here, as I've mentioned, and we're going to talk about some influence today, or how we become better prepared to enter into an influential conversation. So, the class that we're talking about, fundamentals of influence. I'm going to start off by introducing myself here. My name is Patrick Carwin. I see a lot of familiar names in the room here, so nice to see you all. If I've not had the pleasure to meet you, I am a learning and development trainer here with the Sales Training and Support Group. I have been with the company for about 8 years, and I have a unique story. I started off in retail services, felt like I mastered that. Then I went into data analytics for 2 or 3 years, working with a former sales channel, which was Dish One, now known as Caliber. And I realized that I didn't like sitting and staring at spreadsheets and SQL code 8 hours a day. So I took a leap of faith about 2 years ago, joined the training department, and my primary role is to teach Basecamp. So I know a lot of you I've had in Basecamp class, and we also have the opportunity to teach really cool learning and development courses like this one. So that's my spiel about my Dish journey. I'm more interested about my personal life. Up on screen, share a little bit about myself. I have an 11-year-old son. His name is Ethan. In the pictures, you can see that we are huge baseball fans, playing it, coaching it, going to Rockies games. I'm also a big Brewers fan. My wife, Stephanie, I've been married to her for about 4 years now. She's my absolute rock. I wouldn't be here without her, that's for sure. And I'm a big sports buff. So some of my favorite sports teams up on screen here. If you are a Brewers or a Rockies fan, we are going to get along just swimmingly. So I'm going to kick it over to my producer and or my co-facilitator here today. James Lewis is going to be participating with me today, and I want to give him a little introduction as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Patrick. Welcome, everybody. My dish journey started about 5 years ago, and I actually started in retail services. Sounds like a lot of you know Troy Montez, but I had a friend who worked there, got a job for about a year assisting retailers. I quickly moved over to the training team for direct sales and retention, where I actually worked with Lacey Geddes for quite some time, training new hires how to make sales, gain customers, and save customers. We had a lot of fun while doing it and learned a lot. Most recently, I moved over as a learning and development trainer on the same team as Patrick, where we get to primarily teach base camp participants on the sales and retention portion, but we also get to take on a lot of cool projects just like this. Now, on the personal side, you can see that I also have an 11-year-old son. His name is Rocco, and he's on the far left over there, little fur baby. I am engaged with my lovely fiance, Trisha. We actually had to push our wedding out a little bit. So if anybody's in the same boat, I feel ya. We love going outdoors, snowboarding, hiking, playing music, whatever we can. Also a big sports fan. Love to sit outside, watch the Rockies. I can't afford Broncos tickets, but Denver Nuggets, I really love them, and I hope that they'll come back here. Again, I'll be more on the producer side. So if y'all have any questions and you are stuck technically, feel free to side message me or ask any questions. Raise your hand, ask if you need us to slow down, any other technical issues. We're excited to get this rolling.
Let's get it rolling. Lacey, thank you for the welcome. Yeah, we appreciate you guys reaching out to us and giving us this opportunity. So let's jump into this Fundamentals of Influence course. You all signed up for this. You had the opportunity through the Dish Women's Network. But really, I'm curious, before we jump into anything, you signed up for this course. So I'm curious as to why. What do you want to get out of today's session? So for the next hour, we're going to talk about influence and how we can use it in the workplace. What do you want to get out of this? Throw it in the chat box for us. All right, Tova kicked us off. Tova is interested in becoming a manager and feels like being able to influence is going to help in that journey, and it definitely will. I think a lot of people can speak to that. Influence is powerful, and I think we innately feel like once we have power, we can get into those positions of authority and management and really make some changes. Gus, influencing without authority. Yes, sir. That is something that is super crucial. So on the flip side, it is something we're going to talk about. It's kind of a rhetorical question right now. Do you even have to be a manager in order to influence others? Stay tuned. Sonia wants to be able to articulate her vision and ideas to executive leadership. Very, very important. What I kind of hear from that is you want the opportunity to be able to manage up in a way and or provide influential thoughts to those that do have the authority decisions within the company. So that's awesome. Tammy, building relationships and maintaining them. That is key. It's an underlying fact of the day. So definitely keep that in mind. I love what I'm seeing, guys. Keep them coming if you still want to write them down. Um, Really, what we're going to talk about today is the idea and concept of influence. Our objective for this training is to really teach you guys how to influence others in the workplace. But more importantly, what a lot of you have spoke to is we want you to be confident in influencing others no matter your title or your position. Influence is really, really tough. I've done a lot of research on the topic, and I could spend a lot more than an hour talking about how to properly influence people. But we're going to talk about some methods and some tactics that will be useful to you and you can implement right away when we start having meetings and discussions within the workplace. Before we get into things, however, I want to kind of paint a picture for everybody. James, the reason that I invited him to co-facilitate with me today is I know that he had an awesome project that he implemented about 2 years ago at our riverfront site, and it really is a pretty cool story about influence. So I'm going to turn it to him real quick. He's going to tell us a story, and we're going to keep this in mind as we train throughout the rest of the hour.
Awesome. Thank you, Patrick. Started off in Riverfront in Littleton Call Center a few years ago, and as I was walking around, I really started to notice that there was no recycling to be found anywhere on the site. So I decided, okay, I think we need to get a recycling program here at Riverfront. I really didn't know how to do this, So I just started to go with my own means and talking to people. And it took me a very long time, at least about 6 months to even get anything off the ground. I wish that there was something, some sort of tool I had to help me in that process. That's what we're going to teach you about today.
All right, so stay tuned for the rest of that story. I promise it is going to help us really put a bow on this topic of influence. So, first activity that I want to do for today, I want to get you guys involved. I want to talk about a few topics here. So, in the chat box, you guys have already mentioned some key concepts as far as influence, your thoughts on leadership, and even authority. So, in the chat boxes that James has just put onto screen here, I want you guys to give us a definition of each of these concepts and or give us an example of what you think it means to be in a position of influence, authority, or leadership. So it looks like James is typing in authority right now. Ryan and a couple others are in influence. Go ahead and pick between all three of these. Jump around. Todd, you're in leadership. I love it. Define these for me. What do these concepts mean to you? All right, I love what I'm seeing so far. So to point out my co-facilitator here, James, he thinks that authority is somebody that's in charge, his boss. Absolutely, that's a pretty basic definition of authority in my mind. Somebody that has power. Sonia, yeah, somebody that has the final decision, whether it's right or wrong, they're the one, for lack of a better term, they get to pull the trigger, if you will. Sonia, leadership, influence, being able to inspire, the ability to guide others. I love what I'm seeing, and I love that influence is just being flooded with information right now. So Jessica, I see the ability to be persuasive. Tova, being able to encourage others to understand your way of thinking. That's super awesome. What I love about the influence column so far is I'm really seeing a lot of tactics that we can use in order to make decisions. What else do you see here, James? Anything stand out to you?
Yeah, I'm going to go to influence and let's see, Lexi said persuasion. Those really point out to me. In authority, Priscilla says power. And then in leadership, I've got a couple. Rachel says choosing the direction of a team. And Rachel also says serving those team members. Those are some really powerful, short and sweet statements, along with a lot of others.
I love it. You guys, you're nailing this on the head. And take a look at some of the other responses from our members here. One that I want to point out is in our leadership column. Rachel J mentioned that she felt like somebody in a position of leadership is serving team members. And then also Kara, this really resonated with me. Kara thinks that leadership is a combination of influence and authority. And now that's a really cool concept. The reason that I'm having you guys kind of jot all of these down and give examples is because these concepts are very, very similar. But oftentimes I feel like we innately feel like if we're not in a position of leadership or authority, we don't have the final say. We don't have the ability to make change, which is a paradigm shift that I want all of us to come out of this training with. All of us have the ability to make change right now. Whether you think so or not, we are going to provide you some tactics. We're going to provide you a method that will help you get to a positive end result. And even if you have to influence somebody in said authority spot to make the change, it's something that we can all do. And James mentioned in our main chat box, if anything that you get from this course, you do have the power to influence people and decisions. So let's talk about this today. Really, what we're going to talk about is an influence model. I know it's a boring title. We're not very creative, but that's what it is. If you have been through Basecamp or you've been through a sales training and support training class, you will know that we are really all about methods and models. Same thing with CXO, IHS, and all departments. Methods and models are really, really important to us because they help us achieve an end result and it holds us accountable. If we follow each step of a process, that method will hold us accountable for that end result. But more importantly, the method provides us the opportunity to measure analyze, and really be able to figure out if we had a misstep where that occurred, or if we were successful, we can take a look at the step of the process and figure out this is what got me unstuck. This is where I was able to make change. So this model is a 5-step process. It begins with the concept of initiating an idea or a concept. So if we're trying to influence others to make a change, we got to come up with an idea. We then are going to go into a discovery phase. And really, I like to kind of subcategorize this as a research phase. We got to be prepared. We got to get out there. We got to do research and make sure all of our ducks are in a row. This is where we then go into the conversation portion of influencing. This is the hardest part of influencing others. We could spend a whole series about communication tactics and how it is we're really going to try to get people to change and follow our ideas. But we'll talk about some of the tactics and strategies we have in order to provide solutions, have good conversations, and overcome concerns. Finally, once we have that conversation and everybody's on the same page, we agree that we've got a great idea and we need to move forward, we need to take action. So we're going to hold ourselves accountable and move forward with an action plan. We're going to dive into each of these steps right now. So we're going to get this kicked off with our initiation phase. So when it comes to initiating, the concept here is without having a concise idea of what you're trying to do, you're probably going to wind up with a problem very early on. So when you're trying to influence others, if you're not grounded and you don't know your world, you're probably going to have some issues along the road. So this is really the opportunity for us to get grounded, establish a baseline, and move forward. So I'm going to throw this question to James. James, why do you think this is where we want people to start? What's important about this step above anything else?
That's a good question. This is where we really want to start self-reflecting. When we're trying to influence people to make a change, we have to know why are we really getting into this and start to think about why do you want to make this change and what other factors may be involved in your world.
Which is perfect because essentially what we want to do during this first step is we want to establish a baseline. We want to simply identify what it is you're trying to do. I can honestly admit I've gone through some conversations and meetings thinking that I had a good idea of concepts or change, and really I get into it and I have no idea what I'm doing. So establishing a baseline is really all about self-reflection and really knowing why you're trying to influence a change or initiative. This is your WIFM, the what's in it for me for this course and for influencing people. Without a why behind things, there's no reason to proceed. If we're just changing things for the sake of changing things, it's probably not something that we need to do. And honestly, us as human beings, most of us don't like change. So it's hard for us to really get behind it, especially if there's not a good why. If we really do a good job of self-identifying and self-reflecting and grounding ourselves with our concept, we have the opportunity to remove initial roadblocks to where this process is going to be pretty seamless for us. We're going to have the opportunity to really communicate with people. And more importantly, the idea and concept of influencing is you probably have some opposition or you have a resistor in your way. If you're grounded and you have all of your ducks in a row, could be that you don't even have to influence at all. You already have an ally on your side and you can move forward with your thought and idea without much effort. So it starts with the first step of just checking into yourself and knowing what it is you want to do. One of the biggest questions that I want you guys to ask yourself when you go through this initiation phase and doing your self-reflection and doing your own personal research is don't forget to overlook the thought of, are you making this change for a selfish reason? Or are you making it for the greater good of the company or a group or somebody else? And it's really hard for us to really focus on this. And I don't necessarily mean that every decision that you're going to make for change is just going to be of your own personal benefit. I want James to kind of share and continue on his story about this recycling program because he's got a really cool kind of underlying concept about being selfish that I want us all to identify. So, what happened during this project, James, where you felt like, you know, an act of selfishness occurred?
Yeah, it was actually quite interesting when we were going through and I was saying, I really want recycling to happen in Riverfront. It sounds great. It's a selfless act that's going to help out the world and everybody. But when I was trying to influence for that change, I really just thought, I want this recycling to happen. And I didn't really think about everybody else that was involved. And that led me to almost an eventual train wreck in the process.
So it's as simple as we all know that recycling is a good program. It should happen. I don't think there are too many people out there that would argue with that concept. But when James got started, he didn't realize how much work was going to go into it and how much work he was potentially creating for other people. So that was kind of a selfish thought in thinking he could just run with this right away and didn't think about everything that went into it. So be prepared to ask yourself, am I asking a lot from others, or is this something that I can proceed without much interference? All right, so this gets us into our second step. Once we do some self-reflection, we want to get into a phase of discovery, or really what I call this phase is our ability to do some research. There are going to be a bunch of unknowns out there. Even if we answer a bunch of questions for us internally, you might have to reach out to others or rely on other expertise in order to move forward. So the first step is really the thought process of know thyself. The next step is to know thy neighbor. Allowing a process of discovery and fact finding will help you align your thoughts and goals with all parties involved. So, when it comes to discovery, really, I think this is a concept or a critical thinking activity that we can do as a group right now. So, instead of James and I telling you how you should do this step, I want to know what are some actions you would want to take during a discovery step. We've got a poll up on screen here. Go ahead and click through all that you think apply. If I'm asking you to do some research, what are some things you think you should keep in mind? Let's see what you guys think. I really like what I see so far. It looks like we'd still have some tallies coming in. Tova, I love what you wrote in the chat box as far as you think it's important to research the impact your decision could have, both positive and negative. That's super powerful. Yes, that is some research that you need to do. Just because I think a recycling program is going to be beneficial for a site, is it going to be beneficial for everybody, or is it going to cause a lot more work? Now, with all of these steps, I love the fact that there are 0% votes for ask someone to do the work for you. So we can all agree that no, that's probably not going to be the best route to influence somebody, asking somebody to do something for you, and then just winging it. We've already told you that a method is necessary in order to make sure that we are aligned and going to be successful. So keep these in mind. I do want to talk about the steps that we think are important with this. But catching up on our chat box here, Saf, why people would agree, disagree with your idea. Absolutely. You need to figure out why people are in opposition to you. And Aaron, ask as many questions as you can. That's exactly what we do during this phase. That's really what we do through this entire method is ask, ask, ask questions. So during this discovery phase, some of you have already kind of mentioned this. This is an opportunity for us to identify and utilize your relationships. So you're going to have both positive and negative relationships. And I don't mean that you're going to have people out there that are bullies or just hate you or are just trying to get in your way for the sake of it, but you're going to have what we call allies and resistors. An ally could be your friend, it could be a colleague, it could be somebody in your group, or it could be somebody outside of this that just has the same vision as you and understands right away what it is you're trying to do. We need to leverage that ally, their thought process, and help us along the way. But then more importantly, on the opposite side with our resistors, again, these aren't people that are just trying to make your life total garbage, but they're people that might have concerns or might have alternate perspective that we need to consider. So we need to identify these relationships and really get a grasp of who it is that we need to talk to and what about. Also in this second step, we're going to allow the other party to prepare. Since resistors shouldn't be
Patrick,
look, yeah,
Yeah, I gotta stop you right here. Allow the other party to prepare. I got stuck on this one, and I kind of feel like other people may get stuck on this
Okay.
one too. So I want to reach out and ask a question is in the chat box, tell me how do we allow the other party to prepare, and what does that really look like?
Awesome. I love it. What do you guys think we mean by allowing the other party to prepare? Taylor, plant seeds. Tova, give them advance notice of a discussion. Leslie, let them know what you are trying to do and then ask when they can meet to discuss. Give them a window to gather data. I swear, James, I'm pretty sure that this entire group has already been through this training because you guys are nailing it on the head. Todd, giving them a chance to think, no ambush decision meetings. Tova, again, I want to talk about XYZ. Can you please give me some of your idea XYZ time? I love this, guys, and this is exactly what we mean about this step. We don't we don't tell people, hey, I need you to prepare to combat me, but we don't want to ambush people when we start talking about influential ideas. I've been in far too many meetings where somebody just kind of brings up an agenda topic that wasn't planned and it takes people by surprise. So it's not necessarily that they are concerned or that they don't like your idea. They just had no time to prepare and they're going to come out initially with some concerns and or some interference that probably doesn't need to be there. So allowing people to prepare, they can do their research as well. So it's as simple as going into a meeting and saying, hey, we're going to meet again on Friday. And when we meet on Friday, I have an idea that I wanted to discuss regarding this recycling program. Now, I want to talk about the details on Friday, but I would like you all to come prepared with some questions, thoughts, ideas, or concerns about this topic so we can have a good conversation and see if we can get a program implemented. Love what we see, guys. So allow other party to prepare. Don't blindside them when it comes to trying to influence them to do something. Another action that I want you guys to consider during this step is establish relevant currencies so you know what you and they have to offer. So I always feel like this term is a little weird. What do I mean by relevant currencies? In the chat box, if I'm telling you to consider your relevant currencies, what does that mean? Cameron, what each person can bring to the table. Jessica, what can you offer? Absolutely. I don't mean currency like dollars or dinero or lira or yen, anything like that. I'm not talking about financial currency. We're talking about what people have to give and take. It's this idea and concept of reciprocity. So, what am I willing to give in order to get something from you? Or what are you willing to give me and what do I have to give up for it? So, we need to really focus on our end goal, but this is our opportunity to know where our concessions can be made. Can I give up something in order to move forward with this to get somebody unstuck and still end up in my final results? Tova gave a great example. Tova might be great with numbers and somebody else might be better with words. So I don't think I'm going to put Tova on communications, but I am going to have her do some data analysis and play around with some numbers to make sure that we have enough documentation and data to move forward, where I might ask Monica, who's great at communication, I'm sure, to write out our communications, emails, videos, so on and so forth. Fair enough, but I like the example, Tova. All right. The last action that I want you guys to consider during this step is to document everything. So Tova kind of had a good leeway into this. We need to gather evidence and we need to write everything down. If you've been through base camp, if you've been through sales training, if you know Michael White, his famous term is don't just think it, ink it. Write it down, get it into minutes. This really provides us the opportunity to keep our ducks in a row, make sure that we have not left any stone unturned, and when we get to the final steps, we can go back, recheck, and make sure we did what we said that we were going to. And that's the discovery phase. So, thus far, pretty much what we're telling you in a nutshell is we want you to be self aligned. So, actually sit down, think out some questions, If you can answer those questions yourself, then you're prepared and ready to go on to the second phase, which is to get other people involved. Allow them to get prepared, ask their own questions, come up with their own ideas and concerns, and this is when we get into an influential conversation. This is where we start providing solutions. Because once we all do our own discovery, we now get to lay all of our cards on the table and we get to have a discussion. Now, influence is really, really scary at times because it's difficult to do. But with some proper tactics or strategies, you guys are going to be very successful. And this is where I do like to provide a couple of tactics for you when it comes to entering into an influential conversation. I'm going to focus on three. I've done a ton of research, and really all these are just communication methods. The three that I found tied into the concept of influence over and over again starts with the idea behind empowerment. So when it comes to empowerment, I think we all have a good understanding of what this concept is. When we come to a discussion, though, why do you think that I want you to consider empowering others during a influential conversation rather than you just spitting out your ideas? I love what I see so far. Make them a part of it. Marianne, that is fantastic. I agree with that. We need to get them involved. And by getting them involved, we have a statement here, empowering others increases your ability to influence them. Yeah, if we have them come up with their own ideas, they are probably going to be more bought in, and the process is going to get easier and easier. Saf, I love it. Get them to be on your side. Make them feel valued. And that's the key word. Ding, ding, ding. Saf, you get my first virtual high five. I know you can't see me, but my hand's in the air. So slap hands. We want to make people feel valued in this process. If we come to the table and just tell them, this is the way that I want things to be done, this is my end result, go make it happen, that's not influencing. That's dictating, that's being authoritative. And if you have that authority to make that decision, you're just telling people what to do. You're not influencing diddly. I love it. Saf actually gave me a high five. Fantastic. Leslie, collaborating on ideas can help ensure you've thought of every angle. Absolutely. If you empower others to think for themselves as well, you're going to come up with some alternate solutions that could be very viable. Empowering is very, very important to make them feel valued because you're probably going to gain an ally quicker than if you don't allow them to have this opportunity. So keep that in mind when you talk to people. Instead of telling them, hey, I want you to do this, encourage them, hey, I'm really curious about your thought process. What are some ideas that you have come up with that we can discuss and move forward with? Awesome, guys. The next tactic that I want to talk about on top of empowerment is consistent communication. So consistent communication, I could spend a long time talking about different tactics of how we properly communicate. I am of the assumption that we all operate in a corporate world. Some of us should have some baseline on how to communicate, but the key here is consistent communication. We need to be able to discuss with people and talk with them, keep those communication lines open because of what you guys have already talked about. So you can see that these tactics kind of tie into each other. If I empower you to make decisions or come up with ideas, I need you to communicate those with me, and I also need to be able to communicate what I'm thinking. So James, I'm curious in your thought process. I know this is kind of just a general topic, but what do you think are some tactics that you can use to consistently communicate with people during this phase?
I'm going to start off with everybody's favorite is to CC everybody. We all love getting those long emails, but if we CC everybody who's involved, you get a long list of exactly what's going on. Also, here's my Google plugin here. Use Google Docs to share anything and everything. Don't be a knowledge hoarder. And finally, just talk to people. Go let them know what's going on. Have your daily check ins so that they know exactly what's going on in your head.
Yeah, we've already talked about how we don't want to blindside people. Keeping consistent communication is going to alleviate that. Plus, it's also going to make sure that we're holding each other accountable. So don't assume that people know things. And I know it can be frustrating at times to get long email threads or long message threads, but it is important because we already talked about how we need to document everything. So keep that in mind. It is for the greater good. Last tactic I want to talk about is the concept of generosity and abundance. Now, this is definitely a big Jeopardy phrase in my mind. When I first read about it, I had no idea what they were talking about. So I'm going to throw it out to the group. What do you think I mean by generosity and abundance? What do we mean here? How is this a tactic? All right, I love what I see here, guys. So, offering your support in return, acknowledging everyone's efforts and creating a solution, open to share all your information and offering support. Priscilla, you get the gold star on this one because that's exactly what we mean by generosity and abundance. Sharing your networks and expertise. I kind of want to get real with everybody right now, whether you feel the same as me or not. I've been with Dish for about 8 years now. One of the objectives of the Basecamp program, whether you've been through it or not, is to break down silos. Our company has been known to really kind of knowledge hoard and not work the best at communicating with other departments or other groups, and we really just kind of stay siloed. This is not going to work when you influence. If you hold back information, it can seem shady at times. And I do see a lot of improvement programs like Basecamp and these learning and development trainings are really helping us open up and reach out. But sharing that network of expertise is very, very important. Don't be that knowledge hoarder. It's not beneficial for everybody. And really, the only reason we do it is because we don't feel valued. But we just talked about if we empower others to, think for themselves and do their own work, they don't have to feel devalued or they don't have to feel like they're not worth it by holding back their information. They can give it to us, and all parties benefit. Love it. Sharing your influence and using your relationships to help others make connections. Absolutely. It's all about building relationships. So James is going to go ahead and pull open a poll here again. We just talked about three different tactics that we can use when it comes to having a influential conversation with somebody. These are three tactics only. There are about 100 others out there that you can use, but I think these are really tangible and they're really something that we can focus on right away. You may have to use all three of them during a conversation. You might not have to use any of them. You might be able to mix and match. These are Legos. These strategies are Lego blocks. You can pick and choose which you're going to use, and each situation is probably going to be different. But we're curious. Next time you have to sit down in a meeting and you have to have a conversation about change or influence, which one of these tactics are you going to use? Looks like most of the group is going to empower others, which is fantastic. You're going to build some great relationships and rapport that way. Consistent communication. Those of you that have selected it, I love that you're going to try that. I'm going to hold you accountable. I don't necessarily know who you are, but I'm really going to challenge you to make sure that you do keep up with consistent communication and don't assume that everybody knows everything. I would much rather get an email about something that I'm already aligned with and know and be able to delete right away and say thank you than get blindsided 2 weeks down the road about a decision that was made without me knowing. And then generosity and abundance, same thing. Don't knowledge hoard. Don't feel like you're going to be devalued if somebody knows your secret sauce. It's okay to share expertise. James asked a question in our box here, our chat box. Do you have to work on all three of these tactics? All right, I like what I see here. Yeah, the general consensus is no, you don't have to work on all three at the same time. In fact, I kind of already gave it away. Sometimes you'd work on some, or you'd have to work on others for other cases. Uh, just use one of these tactics and see how it plays out. You might have to pivot, but just being aware of you can't go in and just throwing papers around and telling people what to do. We need to focus on empowerment, communication, and sharing our network of expertise. So one thing that I want to do is I do want to take a step back. Most of you, the majority, 57% of us, uh, based off of our poll here, think that empowerment is going to be their first step. So I'm going to challenge you all. We're going to open up another poll here. How are you going to empower others? What's the first step that you're going to do? Next meeting you get into, you said that you want to empower others. How are you going to do it? All right. Ask how they want to contribute. That's a great tactic. Let them know that I am curious about what your thought process is. Let me know what you're thinking. Allow them to voice their opinions and solutions and concerns. And I'd even challenge you to allow them to do that first before you get the opportunity to say a word. And whoa, we just got a bunch come in at the same time. Lead with a call for ideas on the topic before pushing yours forward. That's exactly what I just said. So we're all on the same page here. Lead the conversation with questions. Yep, ask questions, validate their inputs, allow the other side to speak first. You guys are getting this. This is so validating for me as a trainer. You guys are picking up what we're throwing down, and I couldn't be more happy about your ideas behind this. So James and I are holding you accountable. Go forward and use these. Do all of these things. I really want you to focus on being able to make a change. Just as a little recap, a revisit, in this solution phase, while we have this conversation, we're going to explore all available options without judgment. We don't want to pass blame. We don't want to shoot people down. We don't want to tell them that their ideas are invalid. We want to make sure we get all ideas on the table. Even if Cameron Miller is going to come to me and say the way that we're going to fix the Basecamp program is to have everybody Y connect with a magical unicorn, I'm going to throw that option down on the table. I might come back at him and we'll discuss if that's a valid option or not. But that magical unicorn, it's going to be an option for us. I know you still think it'll work, and we're going to have an influential conversation later this week, Cameron. Another recap: share, share, share. So during this process, share your ideas, share your thoughts, and share your knowledge. Don't withhold. Don't silo off your thoughts and ideas. Be prepared to collaborate. In doing all of this, if we have a proper conversation, you have actually done something in addition. You have built and you will be able to continue to maintain trust with other people. And that is the underlying concept of influence. If we have built and maintained trust with people, you're going to be more successful. However, I would be a total fool if I told you that you are going to get 100% buy-in from everybody all the time. It's not going to work 100% of the time. There are going to be concerns. So if you do get into a concern, you got to ask yourself, what you talking about, Willis? That's a really bad impression. I apologize. But when it comes to concerns, there is a step process that we can go through. So people that are in sales or in the sales support group, bear with us here. You probably know this inside and out, but it speaks very true to how we address concerns or overcome objectives. Things we need to consider are the first step is address the concern. James, you were a sales trainer for a long time. Talk to me about why we want to address the concern first.
Patrick, I want to be heard. I want to feel valued. And that's exactly what we're doing by addressing that concern spot on.
Fantastic. Let that person be heard. Let them know that they are still valued and that they're not being opposed to by you. Because if you turn into a resistor to a resistor, this is a scenario where two wrongs do not make a right. Perfect. So validate that concern, address it, and then we're going to drill down. In the chat box, what do you think I mean by drill down, or why is it important to drill down into somebody's concern? Taylor, I love it. Discover the big why. Yeah, we've already established that we're going to ask a billion questions during this phase, and we really need to ask questions as to what their actual concern is. Rachel, to fully understand their concern, absolutely. Leslie says find the underlying reason for their concern. Fear, misunderstanding, past experiences. These are deep, guys. I love what you're coming up with because, yeah, what we're doing in the drill down phase is most people, if they are uncomfortable or fearful about something, they're just going to come up with a random excuse to be in opposition and kind of put a roadblock into your thought or idea. Now, that might not actually be the initial or actual concern, but by asking additional questions, we can get down to the root cause. And what this actually does for this is instead of us just kind of brushing off the concern and or not drilling down, we might be able to get rid of a superficial concern, but later down the road, once we get to actually implementing something, you're going to get another roadblock because you didn't actually address the overall concern. Awesome. After we drill down and we figure out what the root cause is, we're then going to provide a solution. So we already talked about the solution step. We've already talked about, hey, come up with ideas, be generous with your thoughts, make sure that you empower others. And this is where we move forward with this process again. So if we provide a solution to their concern, hopefully we can get that person unstuck. We can get them to be an ally, get them to decide on a decision to move forward, and then we can check for understanding. James, drive us home with why check for understanding is our last step, because in my personal opinion, this is the most important step of validating a concern and or addressing a concern.
I totally agree with you, Patrick. This is where we're gonna really ensure that everybody is on the same page. This is the last step in the process because we want to make sure that all of those concerns, either, what's going on, that we have clarified those, we have found a solution, that there are no other little opportunities for things to fall through the cracks. So we are ready to move forward.
Love it. Address the concern, drill down, provide a solution, check for understanding. Once we do all of this, we are going to be able to move forward. And in doing this, we have now taken a resistor, we have created an ally in whom we have built trust with, and we're starting to build rapport. You now are pretty much building your army of influencers that are going to make change happen. So don't use this as an opportunity to argue. Use this as an opportunity to build relationships. Turn a resistor into an ally. And in doing so, we finally get to go to the last step, which is to take action. Once we have that conversation and we decide what we're going to do, we've got a viable solution and can move forward with a project or program. First thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we all understand what it is that we're doing. So it's just like the last step of that concern model. We're going to check for understanding and make sure that we're all in agreement of how to proceed. We have our documentation, we've written everything down, we know we've left no stone unturned, and we can move forward. The second step of an action plan is the most overlooked, and this is where action plans fail the most. You need to set an agenda and a timeline. You need to hold yourself accountable. The reason this is so important is because I feel like a lot of people, a lot of times, have some really great ideas. They get started on a project. However, they don't hold themselves accountable. They don't set realistic goals. And then the project falls off, or their thought and idea just kind of dissipates into the universe and is never thought about again. By establishing really easy, tangible goals and setting strict agenda and timeline, you will hold yourself accountable and get it completed. So make sure you do that. Once you do that, you're just going to take action. You're going to do it. I don't want there to be a lot of lip service out there. If you've got an awesome idea of how to start a recycling program in your call center like James did, do it. Hold yourself accountable. Make that one of your OKRs. Make it to where it's going to be a better place for everybody. And finally, the last step is to follow up. Why do you guys think in the chat box that I want you to follow up during an action plan? What's the benefit of once it's been established, once we get to that end goal, we're patting each other on the back? Why do I need you to follow up? Yeah, follow up. It helps keep you accountable. You and every party involved keeps them accountable. Find out if there are any issues that came up during the execution. Aaron, that's fantastic thought process. That's what follow-up's for. You might have executed the program, but once you're in the execution phase, then you need to do some analysis and you need to determine, hey, where is it that we either succeeded really well or where are our hiccups? And guess what you get to do at this point? If there are hiccups, you get to start this process all over again. And the reason you can and get to start this process all over again is because you have a very finite method. You've got different steps that you can go back to that are documented that you can help alleviate that issue and make the program an even better success. Allison, learning opportunity for how we can better execute if when we work together again. Man, you are building relationships in this process as well. You can even use this as an opportunity to really sing your success and say, hey, remember when we worked so well and you took my influential idea, we ran with it, you came up with this awesome idea. Let's do this again because I've got another idea that I want to bring to fruition. You guys have been fantastic. So this is the step process. We're going to give you guys a resource here in a little bit, but I want to really kind of close things out here, letting James kind of finish out his story. So I'm very close to James. I was really one of his allies when it came to his recycling program, but I want him to kind of wrap things up and let us know what happened during this process and what he wishes he would have known beforehand.
Absolutely. So I started off with that idea. I wanted to influence people, make a change, and institute that recycling program. But I was all over the place. I didn't know where I was going, who I was talking to, what I needed to do. Seems like I was grasping at straws. Now, looking back at it, the funny thing is, I actually executed all of these different steps, but in a roundabout way, and it took me about 6 months to get that done. Now, if I would have had these steps and go through and try to make these change, I think I would have cut that down to probably about a month or two, and been much more prepared, looked much more professional, and also be able to influence people to make those changes. So I want you all to learn from my mistakes and use this model to go out and start today.
Awesome, James. I'm super proud of you for implementing that program. It was about 2 years ago. It's still going strong. And I might not be a big proponent of recycling. I'm getting better at it, but I know it's something that you're passionate about, and I'm glad you succeeded, even though it took you longer than you thought it would. But with that, this is really all that we have for you guys, but we don't want to leave you empty-handed. We talked about this huge five-step process with asking a bunch of questions. I'm going to go ahead and force open a document for you all in Google Share Drive. I've sent over a copy of our influence model worksheet. I want you to go ahead and download this because there are going to be a bunch of questions in here that we want you guys to be able to ask yourselves and really identify, are my ducks in a row? Can I go into this meeting or start influencing people without much fault? So you'll see this document that there are probably two, if not 3 dozen different questions and kind of some reminders through the thought process of how we can use tactics and give some definition as to what we are talking about. So utilize this. This is really beneficial for larger projects. I'm not saying go and ask these 35 questions every time you need to try to figure out what to eat for dinner. If you're anything like me, that pretty much looks like you just ask your wife what she wants and you make it. So I don't need to use this guide. I'm being influenced very easily that way. But when it comes to actually making change and really coming up with an idea, make sure you're aligned. And if you can't answer the questions on that guide, you're probably going to falter somewhere. So challenge yourself to really move forward. I'm going to speak on behalf of James. I know we're running out of time. I want to thank the Dish Women's Network. You guys have been fantastic, especially a shout out to Lacey. I'm glad that you reached out to us to teach this course. Hopefully you guys learned a thing or two, or maybe you have a new tool in your toolbox to be able to have conversations with people and be influential. So yeah, if you guys have any questions regarding this topic or you need some help getting unstuck somewhere, reach out to James, myself, or the entire sales training, learning and development team. Gene Eckhoff and Sylvia Bhagavati, we're all willing and able to help you guys. So we're ending with about a minute left. I appreciate you all. We're going to stick around. If you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, thanks, guys.
you so much, everybody. We appreciate you.
Oh, I screwed up with the access. I just see this. I'm going to go ahead and Lacey, I'll get with you. We'll get all the attendees and I will get this document sent out to everybody so you guys have something to work with.